from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison with my co-host, Reverend Terry Webster Sr., and today we will be talking about, have we really made any progress in Indianapolis over the last 8 years in reducing the level of crime and violence in the city? Let's have a conversation about that today, and let's talk about, are we making any headway, or are things just the same, or are they getting worse? Welcome. This is Real Talk with Reverend Terry Webster Sr. and Reverend Charles Harrison. And we're so glad today that you have joined us on our podcast, Real Talk. We try to be very honest, when it comes to many of the issues that we're facing in the community. And we call it Real Talk, Pastor Webster, because we're not afraid to say what we think.
Absolutely. Hey, man, good afternoon. Look, it's been a while since I've been with you. Obviously, my schedule has picked up, but I'm glad to be back. And yes, Pastor Harrison, we try to keep it real. Yeah, we do try to keep it real. Well, let's talk today because the conversation, in the city right now, and particularly with the mayoral race, which is getting now a lot of national attention. It is.
Yeah, I read a piece in Politico earlier this week about Indianapolis mayoral race is one of the races now that national pundits are looking at. This is the first time, some believe, since Mayor Ballard that a Republican has a shot, even though the number of registered voters still heavy favor Democrats in the city. But they think that because of the one issue particularly that may be driving it is the issue of crime and violence. And one of the things that I have been thinking about this week and looking at the numbers, and this morning when I woke up, sadly, we had 2 more people killed in the city, which puts us at 144 homicides for the year. We're now on pace for 224 homicides in the city, which will make 2023 the 3rd highest homicide year in the history of Indianapolis. It will be the 4th year in a row the city has eclipsed 200 homicides. And the question that I want to raise today, and what I'm hearing in the city, is what we're doing in the city working? Is it working? Are we staying still? And we're really not making any significant reductions in crime and violence in the city. And I think that's been a debate for the last 10 years. I think the last 10 years, we have seen a dramatic shift, Pastor Webster, in the crime numbers in the city from 2012, when we ended 2012 with 96 murders in the city. Since then, we have seen a dramatic increase in the level of violence in the city of Indianapolis. And certainly we can have conversation about why. Why have we seen that? What's been going on? But that's kind of where we are. My opinion, is that I'm not for sure what we're doing is working. So let's have the conversation.
So tell me, perhaps, Pastor Harrison, let's just tackle the why. Tell me what worked in 96 that's 10 years ago, which perhaps may not be working now, or could we borrow some of those same tactics that worked then to reduce violence? Well,
when I got started in this, and we got started, about 1998 with 10 points. So it's been a while. Yeah. It's been a while.
Here we are still at it.
We're still at it.
In fact, Reverend Harrison, we got started. Now we OGs.
Yeah, we OGs now. We really OGs.
When I'm greeted, somebody will say, "What's up, OG?"
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my hair. I had hair then.
But tell me what worked then that you believe could still work?
Well, I think it's the formation of how me and you got involved. I think we got involved in this initiative because the city had a focus of reaching out to community leaders.
Okay.
We happen to be pastors of churches, in some of the hotspot areas in the city. And the city reached out to clergy and community leaders. You had neighborhood association leaders. And it tended to be more of a bottom-up approach where I think the faith community in particular took a major role in coming up with the strategy of how we reduce the level of violence in the city. And you go back to, I think it was 2006, when you were a part of, and I was a part of, meetings that we, had at the Christamore House. And that's the only time I can remember where you had just about every black ministerial group in the city working on a crime prevention plan together. And we took months in putting that crime prevention plan together, and we submitted it to Mayor Peterson, which later became the crime prevention, initiative in the city, where we looked at 7 or 8 what we felt like were critical issues that we needed to address, as a city, if we were going to lower the number of shooting, stabbings, and homicides in the city. And I think that's the kind of role that we once had in the city, where things were kind of driven from the bottom, and we took a leading role. I got involved in it because I believed that when you had more God, you had less crime.
There you go.
Now we were not on the street proselytizing people, when it came to the initiative for what we did with 10 Point, but our very presence on the street, the light of Christ, on the streets, at 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at nighttime, I think had a tremendous impact on the crime and violence that was happening in the neighborhoods where we were patrolling, and we were interacting with those individuals who were most likely to be the suspects and the victims of violent crimes. And I think we played a role in helping them to resolve their conflicts peacefully in nonviolent ways, and we helped many of them turn their life around, and get on the right path in life. And I think the presence of the faith community along with grassroots organizations on the ground in these neighborhoods where we were experiencing high crime and violence, I think made a tremendous difference.
And I think now, with the absence of a lot of that, actually we're seeing more crime. We
are.
So I think that it would be wise that mayors, candidates really endorse a plan like that.
Right.
And I don't know why that's not political, might I say. That's what we would call metrics that worked.
Right. Absolutely.
And so if we get back to some metrics that work, along with others who are doing other things, we got to do all we can, Pastor Harrison, to address this crime in our communities. And that's not just in the Indianapolis area. This crime is national.
Right.
But if we have methods that have worked before, it'd be wise to go back and pull them.
What I don't understand, and this is the argument I make, is that, and we have to be honest, most of the crime and violence is occurring in communities of color, particularly in the black community,
Absolutely.
impacting black men. My question that I've always asked is, why are black men not playing a greater role at the table when decisions are being made about strategies and resources for those of us who grew up in the black community, who survived, the hood.
Yeah.
And we bring a perspective that I think would be helpful in coming up with a strategy to address this problem.
That's a good thought. It's a good concern, because what I do know and see is that what is happening, and I hope that none of our women are offended by the statement I'm getting ready to make. But what is happening is that I'm seeing women organizations ran by black women, and please, no offense, but they're at the table and they're getting the resources to help our black men. And it almost gives the indication that we don't care or we're not, I would say, able to help black men. So I hope that there's no political strand attached. And I would pray that black men who has a desire to help will come to the forefront and then get a seat at the table. And for the most part, Reverend Harrison, my position is this. If we don't have a seat at the table, let's make our own table.
Well, we may have to do that.
We have to make our own table to where we are doing it ourselves.
Right.
And I'm for that.
Right.
As a matter of fact, we've already got some things in motion, whereas if we don't get a seat at nobody's table, we're going to make our own table and then have our own seat.
Well, and that's true. For those who have just tuned in to Real Talk with Reverend Terry Webster Sr. and Reverend Charles Harrison, we're talking about the issue of urban violence, and particularly in Indianapolis. Over the last 10 years, has our strategy really worked in the city? And I make the argument that it has not, and we're not seeing real significant reductions in violence. And I think one of the reasons why is because we're not involving particularly the faith-based community playing a much larger role in helping with the strategy and also the execution, of violence reduction strategies in the neighborhoods that are being most impacted. And in all of these neighborhoods, Reverend Webster, churches are everywhere. They're everywhere. And we tend to know either the individuals who are involved in the crime of violence or their family members. They're normally somebody in their family is connected to somebody's church. I
think that we have to understand the powers to be certainly need to understand the impact that the church, the faith-based community, still have in our community.
Yes,
we have in fact, we're gonna have that impact because Jesus said that ye are the salt of the earth and the light of the world.
Right.
And so we understand who we are, and I just think that if we're going to see reduction in our community, violence that is, that we have to reach for the faith-based community that also has a concern. I think all of us have the same concern. I would like to hope that all of us have the same concern. Women, our young black women, our women that are leading these organizations, our politicians, I would hope that all of us have the same concerns. I would just love to see that all of us come together with solutions. As you said, we came together to talk about the path forward with our violence reduction years ago. We need to do that again.
Yeah, we called it the City of Peace Coalition, and we met with at that time Mayor Bart Peterson, and we came up, with a strategy, that we felt like would work, and we spent a lot of time on that strategy, and we understood when we were even meeting that we had to pour more resources into what we considered the hotspot areas in the city, and trusted faith-based groups and community organizations that we believe that was doing, a yeoman's work on the ground, in helping to address what we believe were root causes. And we understood that we needed to do street intervention, that if our young men were hanging out, in certain locations in the city, in areas that we were seeing a high level of crime and violence, we needed to be there.
So I would, Pastor Harrison, then I would really recommend, really ask our powers to be, city, county council, the mayor, the governor, and the police department, all of those who are in charge of resources. Why not go back to that same strategy and have those same conversations with faith-based community?
I know some will make the argument that, times have changed, and I would say this, Me and Reverend Webster grew up in the 1970s when we were teenagers then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it was rough then.
Yeah, it was rough then. That was the time that you started to see the crack cocaine come into our communities, the formation of gangs were coming in. My story is my brother was killed in 1975. You had a brother that was killed
in 77 and 87.
And 87,
so I've had two.
Yeah, and so we have, seen a lot over the last 6 decades in this country. And the evolution of the violence in America. I don't believe today that it's worse than what it was in the 80s and 90s, and I think the numbers prove that, But I think what worked then can work today.
Yeah, because let me tell you why. Because the church was there in the 90s, and the church is still here. Regardless of how people try to disdain the church and disown the church, and you have this faith-based organization popping up, this foundation, everybody trying to take the place of the church.
Right.
But you can't take the place of the church.
Right.
And I think when we marry the church and the community together in resources, I think we're going to see a greater turnout and a turnaround.
Right.
Versus leaving the church on the sideline.
Yeah, because I think what the church tries to do is address the issue of the heart.
Right.
So that whatever
because we have a heart issue.
Yeah, because we have a heart issue. So however you want to try to paint the picture as to what the problem is in the community among our young people who are engaged in these acts of violence, it's a heart issue. It always has been a heart issue. And we try to address the heart issue with young people. Whatever circumstance or events in their life that has led them down the wrong path in life and what has caused their hearts to be cold, we try to address that, understanding that we grew up too in very difficult, circumstances. I always tell the story, Pastor Webster, that very easily I could have ended up down a different path because I intended and had it in my heart to kill the people who killed my brother. That was in my heart. I'm not going to deny that, and it was the people on the ground in the neighborhood that kept me from going in that direction. I believe that still works today. It still works today. And, Pastor Harrison, what we believe is that, let's just say, for example, those who may not know, those who own the ground at 10 Point, there's a stipend for a lot of those OGs we call. Well, the truth of the matter is, while you're at home at night, at midnight in bed, sleep, you're not out here risking your life. Right, absolutely. But you got an OG that's out here that's risking their life. Why not allocate resources so that brother or sister who's on the ground with boots on the ground, they can at least get some sort of compensation for being out here helping us stay safe. Right. And my thing is, I would like to see, it expand to other hotspot areas in the city. What all the groups out here that are doing the boots on the ground, approach to addressing urban violence, why are we not expanding that? We're not making the argument that is the only solution or the silver bullet to the problem of urban violence, but it's one piece of, the ingredient, in baking the cake that we need if we're going to reduce these numbers, that our city is experiencing. Well, we're not making the argument, Reverend, that it's the only silver bullet. But I will say this, just like they're slinging dollars and resources toward mentoring programs. And they are. Slinging dollars and toward mentoring and rightfully so. Absolutely. Because if we get these young kids early and mentor them, good chance we can divert them from the streets. But for those that are out there now. And then we got others who have been down that road, such as your OGs. And they're saying, hey, let me, sort of like Priscilla and Aquila, let me show you a better way. So if we have men and women that are willing to go on the streets and do that, and we learn from their experience, and they're walking into hotspot areas, why not allocate them some resources so that at least they can feel good about it? Yeah. In Indianapolis, let's look at the numbers. In 2018, we ended the year with 179 homicides. In 2019, 172. In 2020, 245, the first time the city went over 200 homicides. We did it in a big way. In 2021, we had 272 homicides. We had 4 mass shootings that year, which is the reason that number is so high. Last year, in 2022, we were at 215 homicides. And this year, as of today, we're at 145 homicides, and we're on pace for 224 homicides. So as of August
we got
25th,
4 months still.
We still got 4 months to go. We still have 4 months to go. We're averaging about 18 homicides a month. So that's going to put us, well over 200 homicides again. And my argument is, regardless of what's being said, people on the ground don't feel like things are getting better in these hotspot areas, and that is their reality. So people's perception becomes their reality, and how do we make people feel safer in this city? And I'm making the argument that we cannot ignore what has worked in the past, and that needs to be a part of the strategy today. And I'm saying, Pastor Webster, in my opinion, what we're doing is not good enough.
Okay.
It's just not good enough, and we see it every day in the numbers, regardless of what those who are saying in power that is working. It's not. It's not working, and people on the ground don't feel like it's working. You have mothers now who are doing commercials for Republican candidates, and I never thought I would see this because they're angry that their loved one who was killed, in many cases their son, the murder still has not been solved. And we have too many murders that are unsolved. We have too many people who are dying, and the police can't keep up with doing cold cases and trying to deal with the murders that are taking place every week. They're just piling up.
So you're wanting perhaps what worked 10 years ago. We know it's not a fix-all model, but we do know that it is a model that worked.
That worked, yes.
So you would like to see that highlighted and resources behind it?
Yes, I would. I believe that not to take resources away from some of the newer stuff that we're doing today, but you cannot deny what worked 10 years ago and 20 years ago. It just worked.
Well, Reverend Harrison, I think that it would make sense if it did work. I think the wisdom in all of this would be to the powers to be, whoever is in charge on the 25th floor in November, whoever wins. If it was me, then I would be reaching out saying, because I can tell you right now, no one going to fix the problem.
Right.
The problem is going to remain because it's a hard issue.
Right. It is.
And when it's a hard issue,
it is.
You can't fix a hard issue. Only the gospel can fix the hard issue.
Right.
But what we're saying is that, hey, if this worked 10 years ago, let's go back and see how we can perhaps fine tune it.
Right.
To where it can work again today.
Yes.
Because it's the same method with the same spiritual emphasis and restitution for those who are on the streets. It can work.
Yeah, it can.
It can work.
It can.
And I believe it can work.
Yeah, and it's working in other cities. It's working, Fort Wayne is having success right now. This is the second largest city in the state of Indiana. They're not experiencing the same level of violence as Indianapolis is based on population, because you got to base it on population. We should not be experiencing the same level of violence as Chicago, and we are.
Yeah.
Chicago's got more people, but based on population, the level of violence we're experiencing is at the same level of Chicago, if not a little greater.
I think our cry has to be, if this worked 10 years ago, how can we highlight it again and use it so that it can work now? If we save one life, if we reduce just one life, then we are a success.
Yeah,
and so I would like to see the 10-point coalition, period. I would like to see the 10-point coalition recognized with more resources to recruit others and help along the way.
Yes, and that's true. And I know somebody's going to make the argument the culture has changed. There's more guns on the street. I think that's where the church needs to play an even greater role.
Yeah.
Because if the culture has changed in the sense that young people today don't have a moral compass and they don't have any regard for the sanctity of human life, then who better to address that issue than the church, because it is a hard issue. If the issue is the proliferation of unlawful guns or guns on the street or easy access to guns, then who better to address that issue than the church in addressing the issue that is causing young people to use guns as a means to settle their beefs. It's a hard issue. I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm frustrated, so I'm going to take it out on you and I'm going to pull the trigger. That's a hard issue. I would argue that all day. That's a hard issue. It is the restoring of the moral compass in the hearts of young people today, that violence is not the way to resolve your beefs.
I do agree.
Yeah.
I do agree, and for the most part, we got to instill that in our children young, because now they're getting younger and younger as they pull the trigger.
They are. They're
pulling the trigger at 13 and 14 years old, and if we don't get some sort of handle with some things, then we don't know where to. And I don't want to be like the judge that says, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
We know what to do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it broke my heart this week that a 16-year-old was charged with murder. It broke my heart, but we're seeing more and more of that today. Young people, convicted. This morning, I see 3 young black males arrested for murder in Marion from Indianapolis. We're seeing more and more of that, and me and you are willing to talk about the issue. Here's the issue: the face of violence in America. It has become the face of the young black man, and that just frustrates me. That what you see is us, and we're associated with that. We have to change that.
Well, that ought to be quite honest with you, Pastor Harrison. That ought to and kudos to our women.
Right.
We love them.
Yes.
But that ought to break the heart of every black man.
It should.
You know why? Because it's your son.
Yes.
It's my son.
Yes.
It's my grandson.
Yes.
It's your grandson. That ought to move us to the point again.
Right.
If we don't have a seat at the table, let's make our own table.
Yeah, we're going to have to. Because we want to be at the table, but if you're not going to let us be at the table, we're going to make our own table. And we're going to have to address this issue because these numbers are too high. They're way too high.
And listen, and when we make our table, one of the things we know is that the power of God is with us.
Yes, that's right.
So we're not worried about what nobody is saying or how they air us out on social media. It's easy to talk,
right?
But are you going to be a part of the solution?
That's right.
And I can tell you right now, you and I have been a part of the solution for years.
Yes.
And that's why I don't get bent and out of shape when somebody throw me under the bus, throw my name under the bus. I know I've been a part of the solution for years.
Yes.
My record precedes me.
Yes, right.
And so it looks like right now in 2023, we got to make our own table.
And we do. And we're asking to many of our young pastors and young community leaders, we need you at the table.
Absolutely.
We need to pass the baton to the next generation. Amen.
Because the truth is, you and I are moving off the scene.
That's right. We are.
So we need the young Joshuas and the young Elishas. Because you got to realize that while Moses was on top of the mountain praying, and they were holding his arms up, Joshua was in that valley.
Yes,
he
sir.
was fighting. He was warring.
And
we got to get back to those principles.
Yes.
Otherwise, my grandson don't stand a chance.
That's right. And my son and daughter's children, I'm prophesying my grandchildren to come.
Yeah.
Don't stand a chance. Well, Pastor Webster, thank you so much for the conversation today with me about this issue. We were going to do something else, but we felt like we needed to talk about this issue, and we want to thank all of you for tuning in and joining us week after week on this podcast, Real Talk. We try to bring real talk about the real issues that affect our community here in Indianapolis, and we talk about what's affecting cities, nationwide and certainly throughout Central Indiana. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. You can subscribe to it and share it on Facebook and Twitter. We want to thank you so much again for joining us today. And if you want to say anything, Pastor Webster, as we close out.
Well, it's awful hot, so let's stay cool. And what I'm hoping is that as hot as it is outside, our tempers this weekend won't reflect that.
Yes.
And that we have level heads and that we can have a safe weekend.
This has been Reverend Terry Webster Sr. and Reverend Charles Harrison. We pray that you have a blessed and you have an awesome day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.